Today, we're diving into the world of a microscopic organism that has a truly massive global impact. It's a single-celled parasite, and it lives inside millions of people, often without a single symptom. But it's also capable of causing some absolutely devastating diseases. This is a story of stealth, survival, and a hidden war happening inside us.
I mean, really think about that for a second. An organism with no brain, no nervous system. But its survival strategy is so good, it can colonize your body, sneak past your immune system, and literally turn your own tissues into its food source. That is exactly what we're talking about with Entamoeba histolytica.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll track its silent journey around the world. Then we'll get into its clever, two-faced strategy for survival. After that, we'll look at the anatomy of its attack, and finally, we'll talk about how we can stop this thing in its tracks.
All right, so let's start with the sheer scale of this problem. This is not some rare, exotic bug you hear about once. Nope, as the name here suggests, this thing is a silent global traveler. Its passport is pretty much stamped for every country on Earth.
Its home base is the human colon, and it's found all over the place, especially where sanitation isn't great. But here's the real kicker. Most of the people who are infected feel totally fine. They are silent carriers, unknowingly passing the parasite on to others, and that right there is the secret to its success, hiding in plain sight.
So you've got to wonder, how does it manage to be both a harmless passenger and a deadly invader? Well, the secret is its incredible ability to lead a double life, changing its entire form to suit its needs at any given moment.
You see, the parasite has two different forms. First, there's the cyst. Think of it like a tiny, armored transport pod. It's dormant, incredibly tough, and can survive out in the world until it gets ingested. But once it's safely inside you, it transforms into the trophozoite. And this is the weapon. This is the active, moving, feeding stage that invades your tissues. Armor, then weapon. It's a brilliant two-stage strategy.
So here's the entire invasion plan. It all starts when you swallow one of those armored cysts. Your stomach acid can't even touch it. Once it hits the intestine, it transforms, releasing the active trophozoite. This is where it invades the colon wall and starts multiplying. Then, and this is the really clever part, before it exits the body, it transforms back into that tough-as-nails cyst, ready to start the whole cycle over again in a new person. It's an incredibly efficient system.
So what happens when that active trophozoite decides to stop being a quiet resident and actually goes on the attack? This is where things get pretty serious. The parasite's #1 weapon is an enzyme called histolysin. The name really tells you everything. Histo for tissue and lysis for breaking apart. It is literally a tissue-dissolving chemical that the amoeba uses to just melt its way right through the lining of your colon.
This detail is so telling. The kind of ulcer this amoeba creates is shaped like a flask. So you get this narrow little opening on the surface of the colon, but underneath it balloons into this wide area of destruction. This hidden, expanding invasion means the damage is way more extensive than it looks from the outside.
For most people, the invasion stays in the intestine, but for about 5 to 10% of cases, the trophozoites pull off a jailbreak. They get into the bloodstream and travel to other organs, and their #1 destination is the liver.
When the amoebas get to the liver, they just keep doing what they do best, dissolving tissue. They create this cavity, an abscess that's filled with liquefied dead cells. And the source material has this unforgettable description for it: anchovy sauce pus. I know, it's a pretty visceral image, but it just drives home how destructive this parasite is. And all the while, the living amoebas are there in the wall of the abscess, continuing the assault.
Okay, that all sounds incredibly grim, I know, but this is not a one-sided fight. We have some really powerful tools for finding, fighting, and ultimately preventing this parasite.
But, diagnosis isn't as simple as just finding an amoeba. There's a major complication. Entamoeba histolytica has a nearly identical twin that's completely harmless, called Entamoeba coli. You have to be absolutely sure you've got the right culprit, because treating the wrong one is totally pointless.
So how do the experts tell them apart? Well, it comes down to really fine microscopic details, like the number of nuclei inside the cyst. But the real smoking gun is this. If you see a trophozoite that has actually eaten red blood cells, you know for sure you're looking at the dangerous histolytica. Its harmless twin doesn't do that. Getting this ID right is the critical first step.
Our modern medical toolkit is pretty impressive. For diagnosis, we've got everything from standard microscopes to highly accurate PCR tests that can tell the species apart by their DNA. And for treatment, we have specific drugs for specific problems. Some drugs, the luminal ones, work only inside the intestine to clear out carriers. Others, the tissue drugs, are what you need to fight an invasive infection, like a liver abscess, and very often you need a combination of both to completely wipe out the parasite.
But at the end of the day, the best fight is the one that never has to happen. Prevention really just boils down to the fundamentals of public health: clean water, safe food, and proper sanitation. And crucially, it means finding and treating those silent carriers we talked about at the beginning. That's how you break the chain of transmission and stop the invisible spread.
And that really is the central challenge, isn't it? Entamoeba histolytica thrives in silence, hiding inside millions of perfectly healthy people. This isn't just a battle you fight in a clinic with medicine. It's a global public health war against an enemy that's invisible. And it leaves you with a big question. How do you defeat an invader that has perfected the art of hiding in plain sight?